Recording in progress.
Good evening, everybody. It's 6 o'clock, so we'll start the meeting. Welcome to the Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Michael Lilly, Chair of the Planning Committee, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. To begin the meeting, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the Town Hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the Town Hall in St Runwell Street. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube page and will be available after the meeting. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute the microphones when not speaking. Introductions. We'll start with members of the committee and officers, although just Simon by himself tonight and of course Robert. So everyone will introduce themselves, starting from my left, please.
Good evening, Lynn Barton, Shrub End Ward.
Nigel Chapman, Rural North Ward.
Councillor Kirkby Taylor, representing Castle Ward, substituting for Councillor Nissen.
Sam McLean, Newtown and Christchurch.
Councillor Pat Moore, Mersey and Pyfleet Ward, substituting for Councillor Roger Mannion.
Councillor Helen Chua, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Councillor Jackie McLean, Marks Townley Ward.
Councillor Lee Tate, Prettygate Ward.
Simon Cairns, Planning Development Manager. Thank you.
Robert Carmichael, Democratic Services Officer.
And we appear to be missing Councillor Sam McCarthy. Any apologies received from him, Robert?
No, Chair.
Oh, okay, then perhaps he got stuck in the traffic, but we'll wait. But he should really be here, or send apologies at least anyway. We'll chase that up with his group leader. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and use voice or camera flash functions. We may have a break at 8 o'clock, subject to the items remaining. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room. Whilst determination of a planning application is not a quasi-judicial process, unlike certain licensing functions carried out by the local authority, it is a formal administrative process involving the application of national and local policies, reference to legislation and case law, as well as rules of procedure, rights of appeal, and an expectation that people will act reasonably and fairly. All involved in these decisions should remember that the possibility that an aggrieved party may seek a judicial review and or complain to the Ombudsman on grounds of maladministration or a breach of the authority's code. Thank you. We've already heard that we have the substitutions for tonight. Urgent items. There are no urgent items, just declarations of interest. Any members with the declarations of interest, please? No? Great. If something does come up, you're able to mention it when that comes and that. Thank you. We have your say. If anyone has a petition they wish to present to me on any of the items on the agenda this evening, please do so now. Oh.
Sorry, this is just for a petition, any petitions that are being submitted to the chair. So it's the have your say speaker element will happen later in the meeting.
Oh, so there is no petition? No. I got excited then. I thought, it's the first time ever I had a petition. Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Story of my life, another letdown. Where were we? Item 6. The minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of September 2022 and 20th of October 22 are before members. Are there any points of accuracy that need raising? No. Could I ask for a proposer then, please, and a seconder, and then we have a show of hands to approve the minutes. We'll go for Councillor McLean, a proposer, and Councillor Chowan as a seconder for that. Can we have a show of hands, please, as approval? That's unanimous there. So we have your say tonight. We have two applications tonight. 7.1, we have 43 Roman Road. We have Public 4, James Pilgrim, who's on Zoom tonight. We have Councillor Mark Goucher speaking, and Public Against, Rosie White, for this in a while. Thank you. And we have no speakers on 7.2, 44 Marlow Way. So, in that case, on 7.2, does anybody wish to speak on that item, or do they wish to take it on block? Have I a proposer, please? Councillor Lee Trent, and a second, Councillor Moore for that. So 7.2 then, 222402, 44 Marlow Way. We'll take that on block as is written in the report in tonight's meeting. All those in favour of taking on block, please.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we move on to 7.1, and we have Simon Cairns to read through the application first. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I will just turn my sound up.
You've got to mute your microphone.
Yeah. Apologies, Chair. Yes. We have before us this evening a householder application for a single-storey rear extension at number 43 Roman Road. The application was called in for determination by Councillor Goucher for the reasons set out in the report. I'll just share my screen, Chair. Thank you, members. Apologies for the delay on that one. So we have an application before us, as I explained, for a proposed single-storey rear extension. This is the property. It's a mid-terraced, mid-19th century property. It is of 2 stories plus basement. As you can see, it forms part of a similar semi-detached or similar attached pair that are now part of terraced frontage development within the conservation area. You can see this is the existing property, which has yet to be extended at all to the rear. You can see it has a frontage bay window and is a typical mid-19th century townhouse. The properties in this part of Roman Road are within the conservation area and subject to an Article 4 direction relating to windows. So here we have the proposal as originally submitted. As you can see, it came in with an 80 or 90% full width rear extension with flat roofed form, with a lantern light and French doors to the rear. We sought amendments on this proposal to improve its relationship to the parent building. And this is the resultant final submission before you this evening for consideration. As you can see, it has a twin gabled rear form with top lit space from within the central valley, glazed rear elevations. It is set in from the boundary, as you can see at this point, where the properties are subdivided by a cross passage. The proposed extension would replace an existing side boundary wall. Of particular note is the fact that the property to the north of the development site has also been extended extensively to the rear previously. There is no objection from this property. The property on the southern flank, as you can see, is a very similar or identical dwelling type with a basement kitchen area lit by a low-level window. Here you have the rear of the existing property. As you can see, there is a basement window on the application site property that is mirrored in the twin dwelling to the south. There is a pergola which is not subject to the current application at the end of the garden. That will be subject to a separate proposal to follow at a later date. This image shows the attached dwelling to the south, which you can see is very similar in form, together with the side boundary wall to the garden area, which follows the line, the north boundary of the cross passage, which divides the 2 dwellings, as you can see, just visible in the picture on the rear elevation at ground level. So that completes this evening's presentation. I'll be pleased to answer any questions following the presentations by the objectors and supporters of the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Can I call Rosie to the microphone, please? Welcome. You have 3 minutes to speak. A bell will sound at 2 to let you know it goes, so it will start when you press the red button. Thank you.
Firstly, this property, 43 Roman Road, is on the market and is shown as being sold subject to contract. I have lived at 41 Roman Road for over 40 years. These 2 houses form a unique pair of Victorian villas with matching exteriors, unchanged since they were built over 130 years ago. They are 3-storied with half-light basements. This means the extension must be 1.5 stories and not the 1 story as in the planning officer's report. At its highest point, the extension will be 4 meters high. That's two 6'6" men standing on top of each other, totally overbearing in such narrow properties, with each house and garden being only 6 metres wide for an extension of 5 metres by 6 metres, only 2 metres shorter than the house behind it, almost doubling the length of the property. The plans show the existing and original garden wall between 43 and 45 Roman Road, although protected by Article 4, will be destroyed if this plan goes ahead. It is one of the few remaining original garden walls, and this issue is not addressed in the planning officer's report. Other properties in the conservation area have had extensions, but none of them had half-light basements, requiring the extra height so overbearing in a narrow plot. Moreover, I find it difficult to see how black metal crittle doors are considered sympathetic to the style and age of the host dwelling, to quote the report. They are not. Furthermore, there is no mention of the materials to be used on the roof, and for the third time, although it states internal dimensions are shown, they are not. I was surprised to read in the planning officer's report that the wall at the end of the garden is not part of the Roman wall, as I have a letter from Philip Wise, heritage manager, to me stating, and I quote, "There is likely to be original Roman walling and foundation surviving below ground level. I applaud your creation of new conservation areas in our historic city, but they can only protect our rich heritage if such large and unsympathetic extensions are not permitted. Thank you."
Thank you. And now we have James Pilgrim, who's the agent. He's on our Zoom. James, are you there? I think he's coming through. James, we can't hear you, and you look like you're in a dark room with no light. So we still can't hear you, James.
Mute. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, you actually look you do look like a disembodied person.
Okay, so everything has been designed by Optimum Architectures.
Sorry, hold on.
Oh.
James, before you start, I just have to say that you have 3 minutes to speak, and that when you start, the bell will go up to 2. So if you could start now.
Thank you. Okay, so to Rosie's point, the house is up for market, sold subject to contract. The reason we put it on the market is to be able to give us options in case this isn't to go through. The reason we want the extension is to afford us extra space as a family to develop or to extend the downstairs area. With regards to local planning, with regards to local rights for light, with regards to the finish of the extension, it's all being considered with regards to local legislation, with regards to materials and finishes. That's all in consideration with building. So they're not crystal glass, it's timber framed doors, glazing out the back. And we've changed the extension to a double gable as advised through Colchester planning. I have nothing further to say on that matter, really. Everything we've done is compliant. So, that's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We just heard you then, but not very clear. But it's a problem his end, not our end, I'm afraid. That's the worst thing about technology. So I'll call Mark, go to the microphone, please. Mark, you know the score. You have 5 minutes. The bill will go after 4.
Thank you, Chair. I've just come to explain why I put in the application. It was after concerns raised by residents, because obviously Roman Road is within the conservation area. So I was concerned that we get this right. One of the concerns I have is about the height, and I'd welcome some clarification whether or not this is going to be 1.5 stories high. And if so, it does seem out of keeping with other extensions in Roman Road. But again, I'd welcome expert clarification on that. And also on the length, if it is going to virtually double the length of the property.
Mark, can we just pause there for a sec? We have a technical issue. Could you mute yourself, please, on the James on the Zoom, because it's interfering with our broadcast. And excellent. Sorry, Mark. So we have to pause the clock. So
okay,
thank you for that. It was interfering with us.
Okay, that's no problem. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'd welcome expert clarification on the height issue and whether it's in keeping with other extensions, but also on the length, because it does concern me if this is an overbearing extension. Whether or not it's going to have not only a detrimental effect on the neighbouring property, but also whether it's in keeping with other extensions within the street. I'm also concerned about the issue of the doors has been raised, and whether these black doors are in keeping with conservation area rules. I know that there are quite stern rules on windows, and I'd welcome again expert advice on what the rules are with regard to the doors, and whether these black metal crital doors are in keeping with the rules that apply in Roman and Castle Road within that conservation area. And the issue of the wall as well, whether I'd like again expert advice on what is the situation with this wall. If it is an original wall, is there any a protection of this original wall, or can it just be demolished and replaced? That's something I'd welcome clarification on. The application raised alarm bells with me because it is within this conservation area and it is so high with the half-light basements, and whether that is something that is in keeping with other extensions in the area, because to me it seems quite a large and overbearing extension, and so those are my main concerns. The issue with the pergola at the back of the garden, I understand, is a separate matter, but again I would welcome clarification on the status of the wall at the back of the garden and whether there are any Roman wall remains underneath. But I recognise that is a separate matter to the main consideration tonight. But my main concern is the height and the length of the extension and whether it constitutes an overbearing development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Simon, we have issues there. I understand that the application was changed from a flat roof to a different roof to allow more sunlight and the angles into there, but if we could explain the roof, the garden wall, is it the status of that, and the pagoda at the bottom. It is a separate planning issue and it's not part of this one, so we're not really going to discuss that tonight. It might turn up in a planning application in the future, so we'll discuss it then, but Simon could clarify all the points raised, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, dealing with the extraneous matters that have been raised, the pergola does not form part of the current application. It does require planning permission, and unless it's removed, a separate application will be invited for that structure. So I think we need to set that out of our mind. It's not part of the current consideration, and I'm sure in due course, when an application is received, I'm sure there will be interest and interested parties to comment on any such application. With regard to the whole issue of the rear wall to Land Lane, The rear wall does follow the line of the historic town wall. However, in the 19th century, whole sections of it were rebuilt in brick. This property has one of those rebuilt sections. Again, the wall is not affected by the proposed development at all. Even its setting, I would say, is not affected or would not be affected adversely by the current proposal. There are sections of early fabric surviving in different parts of the rear line of the wall, but this property does not have Roman fabric above ground anyway that would be affected by any of the current works. With regard to the actual extension, it is from a ground level. It is not from an elevated level. Various points have been made that it's 1.5 story. I think those of members who visited the site will recall this is a rear patio area. It is very much the ground level, and any accommodation beneath it is basement accommodation, albeit on the frontage to Roman Road, it is exposed at street level. But from the rear, and in the context of the proposed extension, it would be experienced as ground floor extension with any accommodation that is beneath it at basement level. It's very clear that the proposal is single story only. It has a twin pitched roof to minimize the height of the rear gables. To my mind, it does not adversely affect what is, I totally agree with the neighbouring opinion. It is a very pleasing pair of well-designed mid-19th century dwellings, but the extension has been designed with due consideration for the parent building, albeit in an honestly contemporary style. It does not attempt to be Victorian, and I don't see there is any reason why it should attempt to be Victorian. But in terms of scale, mass and form, it does respect the parent building to which it would be attached. In terms of the relationship with the property to the south, this would sit obviously to the north of that property and is offset from the party boundary and separated from the neighbouring dwelling by the cross passage, which provides pedestrian access through the terrace to the street frontage. We have very carefully considered the 45-degree rule in plan and elevation, and the proposed development would not materially affect land to the light to the very slender basement window on the neighbouring property, which rises above the existing ground level. I can appreciate that must be concern to that resident, and I understand that. But nevertheless, my advice to you is it would not materially affect those residential amenities. In addition, an issue has been raised with regard to the length of the extension at 6 metres. Many of the properties along Roman Road, on both sides, but particularly on the eastern side, where the rears of the properties are visible from Land Lane, have been extensively extended, and many in a markedly less sympathetic form than is now sought as part of this application. We had due regard to those public views from Land Lane and gave very careful consideration to how the extension would appear. In terms of our opinion as your officers, we believe it is in scale and proportion with the parent dwelling and would not appear alien or incongruous or intrusive when viewed from the public realm from Land Lane to the rear of the property. In terms of the styling of the French doors to the rear, to a degree, this is a matter of taste. In terms of the materials and finish of those French doors, personally, I think the dark colour shown would be visually recessive and would not appear to have undue presence in the wider public realm. The statutory duty, which you'll be aware of with respect to conservation areas, is to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of that area. It is your officer's view that this extension would serve to preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the area. It is not unduly high or unduly long, having regard to what is quite a substantial, albeit narrow, typical town garden. It is quite long, and there would be more than adequate amenity space left to serve the dwelling. The issue of the side wall to the passageway has been raised. That does appear to be a period wall. It is approximately 1 metre in height. Frankly, its contribution to the wider conservation area in terms of the character and appearance of that area is minimal, taking views from the public realm. It is of minor historic interest, being a mid-19th century wall. It is not a matter of great scarcity. Brick walls are extremely common throughout Colchester, and indeed many of them are an awful lot older than the 19th century. It is a very pleasant feature, I agree, but it would still be retained substantially along the length of the garden area. The replacement of the walling by the extension, I do not think would be noticeable from the public realm. Although I can appreciate the neighbours' desire to preserve it, I do not think that that is reasonable given our statutory duty, which is one to preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the area, having regard to wider public views and how the properties is experienced by the majority members of the public. Happy to answer any questions, Chair, in addition to the matters which have already been raised.
Thank you, Simon. Members of the committee, does anybody have? Councillor Moore.
Just briefly, the length of the extension, sorry, I've got Google Earth up here, so I'm looking at an aerial view. The length of the extension against the depth of the house, how big is it? I can't visualize the distance is given, only a percentage against the house itself.
Sorry, Chair, the length of the extension is not the full depth of the existing dwelling house. It's approximately, I would say, about 80% of the plan depth of the existing dwelling house, which is longer than 6 metres. They are quite substantial properties, although it looks quite cottagey from the rear. From the front, they're somewhat grander with the basement and bay window on the front. So the property, I would say, it is probably about 2/3 of the depth of the existing, or 70% of the depth of the existing dwelling. But that is not experienced, obviously, when one looks at the rear. You can't really tell the depth of the plan form. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And as a matter of record, that a site visit was made Monday afternoon by myself, Councillor Barton, Councillor Kirby-Table, and Councillor Sam McLean. Any other questions, please, for the planners? Councillor Kirby-Table.
Is the basement a single area, or has it been subdivided? Because looking at that, it looks like we're going to remove natural light to the eastern end of the basement. So are we removing the only source of natural light to part of the basement, or will there still be natural light from the west side of it? I can see that there is a window at the front, so the question is really, has the basement been subdivided?
I can answer that if that helps. I'm the owner of the property.
Sorry that, I'm sorry, but we've had our public speakers for tonight. We're just waiting for our plan officer to do that, whoever that
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the basement area comprises a utility room in the corner, in the northern corner of the room. However, the basement area comprises a lounge, which is a large room with a window to the front and a light well and sash window to the rear. So the room would still be served by fenestration on the front elevation, which forms part of a what appears to be a single living area at basement level, together with a utility area.
Any comeback for yourself, or are you happy with that?
No, I'm happy with that. I would like to say I'm never a fan of twin gables because valley gutters are very prone for being blocked and long-term maintenance issues, but that is a design issue which we're not discussing here.
Thank you. Any more questions at all? I've got a slight one, just a clarity one. If a house is sold or up for sale, does it have any planning material matters to this application?
Thank you, Chair. No, planning permission runs with the land. The fact that the fact of ownership is not a material planning consideration. Indeed, you could apply for a planning permission on a property you do not own and serve notice on the owner.
Oh, thank you. So, committee, are there any other questions? If there are no other questions, is there a proposal that it is recommended for approval as written in the report? Do we have a proposer for this application now? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll happily propose it. I mean, it is one of those slightly difficult ones, isn't it? It's a conservation area. I know Roman Road quite well. I can understand the concerns, but clearly the planning officers have been through this very, very well, and I accept all the responses that have been said. It is a matter. Some of these things are a matter of taste, aren't they? The design of the conservatory itself, really, whether it should be Victorian or whatever, and I don't think it should be. I tend to agree, as I've mentioned before on occasions, it's better to have something a bit different than some sort of pastiche of what would have been there 100 years ago. So I tend to support the application, so I'm very happy to propose we agree, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Jackie McLean, thank you. So we now have a proposal and a seconder. So can we have a vote on this application as written exactly in the report for tonight? So for all those who are in favour of approval, please show your hands. That's unanimous, so the application is approved, and that concludes the meeting for tonight. Thank you very much for. Thanks very much for turning up. Hopefully weather will improve. Thank you.